When people ask me whether they should start with stocks or real estate, I usually ask them a different question first. Why are you asking now? Most of the time, the answer is not analytical. It is emotional. Somebody they know just made money in one bucket or the other. A friend bought a rental. A cousin made a killing in the market. A coworker keeps bragging about a property deal. And suddenly the subject is not abstract anymore. It feels urgent. There is a name for that. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, frequency illusion. It is the same thing that happens when you start thinking about buying an F-150 and then you see F-150s everywhere. They were always there. Your brain just started noticing them because now they matter to you. Investing works the same way. The moment you buy a few shares of Coca-Cola or Johnson & Johnson or Procter & Gamble, all of a sudden the world starts teaching you. Now you care when earnings come out. Now you care about the dividend date. Now you care whether the valuation makes sense. Now price movement means something. Before that, people can explain price to earnings ratios, yield, payout ratios, options, cash flow, and all the rest until they are blue in the face. It does not stick. It is not relevant yet. But the minute you own the thing, your brain changes. That is why I tell people to start with stocks. Not because real estate is bad. I love real estate. Real estate is one of the finest wealth building tools in the world. And the tax code practically rolls out a red carpet for it. But loving a thing does not mean it should be your first step. Your first step should be the place where a mistake is least likely to blow you up. If I buy a few shares of a dividend stock and I am wrong, I can lose money. That is unpleasant. If I buy a rental property and I am wrong, the tenant can stop paying, the roof can leak, the air conditioner can die in July, the tax bill can jump, the tenant can trash the place, somebody can claim mold, somebody can sue. And while all of that is happening, I still have debt service, still have insurance, still have maintenance, and still have stress. That is not theory. That is reality. So when a young investor asks me where to start, I tell them to begin where the downside is more manageable and the feedback loop is faster. I tell them to begin with stocks. Over the years, I developed a simple framework. I call it the 30-30-30-10 rule, 30% in income, producing stocks, 30% in real estate, 30% in managed money, which means money that is being run by a system. A manager, an ETF strategy, a syndication, or some structure where you are not making every call yourself, and 10% in cash or cash equivalents. That cash bucket can include actual cash, short-term reserves, maybe some gold, maybe some Bitcoin, maybe something liquid that gives you dry powder when opportunity shows up. But the point is not where you finish. The point is where you start. And for most people, you start in the stock bucket. You start there because stocks give beginners three things they desperately need: liquidity, a learning curve that will not bankrupt them, and relevance. Let us start with liquidity. If you buy a stock today and need the money 3 months from now, you can sell it. You are done. Maybe you have a gain, maybe you have a loss, but you are not trapped. If you buy a rental property today and need the money 3 months from now, you are in an entirely different conversation. You may have to cut the price, you may have to wait, you may have to borrow against it. You may discover that a supposedly great investment is not very liquid at all. For a beginner, liquidity is not some luxury. It is protection. It gives you flexibility. It gives you margin for error. And when you are new, that margin matters. The second thing stocks give you is a better learning curve. People fool themselves into thinking real estate is easier because they can touch it. They can walk through the kitchen. They can look at the roof. They can picture a tenant living there. But understanding what a house is and understanding real estate investing are two completely different things. Real estate done right means you understand the market, the financing, the reserve needs, the CapEx schedule, the insurance, the property taxes, the vacancy assumptions, the property management, the tenant laws, the legal structure, the real cash flow, not the imaginary cash flow people advertise online. That is a lot of moving parts. And if you get one of those parts badly wrong, the education gets expensive in a hurry. Stocks let you make smaller mistakes while learning much bigger principles. That matters when I talk about starting with stocks. I am not talking about gambling on whatever somebody shouted at you from Reddit or whatever your brother-in-law mentioned between sets at the gym. I am talking about starting with quality, boring quality companies that have been paying and increasing dividends for years, sometimes decades, dividend aristocrats, dividend kings, Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, businesses that have already proven they can survive a lot of economic weather. Then I filter them. I want to know whether the yield is attractive. I want to know whether the dividend has been consistent for at least a decade. I want to know whether the dividend is growing. I want to know whether revenue is stable or rising. I want to know whether the valuation is reasonable. I want to know whether there are options available so I can create additional income streams. I want to know whether the market, imperfect as it is at least broadly supportive rather than screaming that something is badly broken. That is not speculation. That is training. And the best part is that once you own the stock, all of those factors become relevant in a way they never were before. Now the dividend date matters, now the earnings call matters, now the valuation matters, now the chart pattern matters. Now the world starts teaching you because you finally have skin in the game. That is how competence gets built. Not by watching 10 more videos, not by reading one more Reddit thread, not by having theoretical opinions, by owning the thing and paying attention. I have said for years that it does not take 10,000 hours to become useful at investing. It takes far less than that to become competent. Competent means you stop guessing. Competent means you start acting deliberately. Stocks are the cleanest place to build that. Now let me say this again, because people hear me say start with stocks and they think I am anti-real estate. I am not. I love real estate. The tax code loves real estate. You get depreciation, sometimes bonus depreciation. You get leverage. You get control. You get exchanges. You can borrow against depreciated property. You can die with it and pass along stepped up basis. There are reasons serious fortunes have been built in real estate for generations. But that does not change the sequence. Just because a thing is powerful does not mean it should be your first move. If you want exposure to real estate early without putting yourself in a position where one bad roof can wreck your year, there are smarter ways to do it. One way is house hacking. Buy a property with extra rooms or a duplex or a triplex. Live in one part. Let the other part help cover the cost. Now you are learning with training wheels on. You have some skin in the game. You are getting the experience, but you are not diving straight into deep water with no reserves. Another smart route is what I call the live in improvement strategy. Buy a primary residence that is a little tired. Fix it up while you live there. Stay there long enough to qualify for the primary residence capital gain exclusion. Then sell it, done right. That can be a tremendous way to build capital without ever becoming a traditional landlord on the first deal. A third route is REITs, real estate investment trusts. These let you own real estate exposure with the liquidity of a stock. They trade publicly, they pay dividends, they teach you how real estate behaves, and they do it without trapping all your capital inside a single roof and a single tenant. That is a very intelligent bridge from stocks into real estate. Now I want to pause on one mistake I see all the time. People save up $20,000 or $30,000. Watch a few videos, get excited, and convince themselves they are ready to buy some distressed rental in a market they do not understand because somebody online made it sound easy. That is how beginners get hurt. The property is cheap. The rent estimate is optimistic. The vacancy assumption is fantasy. The repairs are underestimated. The insurance quote was stale. The taxes change. Then the first year delivers a punch in the mouth, and the worst part is not even the pain. The worst part is that one bad first experience can push somebody away from investing for years. I do not want that for you. So let me give you one of the simplest underwriting truths I know. If a property rents for $1,500 a month, do not kid yourself that you get to keep $1,500 a month. You do not. Not after taxes, insurance, maintenance, management, vacancy, repair reserves, and capital expenditures. In many cases, if that property brings in $1,950 a month, the actual money left to service debt and create real cash flow may be closer to $750. That is real life. If the numbers do not work under conservative assumptions, do not do the deal. Real estate is not magic. Discipline still matters. That is another reason I like starting with stocks. You learn discipline in a lower damage environment. You start to think in terms of cash flow. You start to understand that the goal is not to eat the chicken. It is to own the chicken and collect the eggs. The stock market version of that is owning cash, flowing businesses, and collecting dividends, option premiums, and eventual appreciation. The real estate version of that is owning productive property and collecting rents while managing risk intelligently. But before you can build that whole machine, you need sequence. So here's the sequence I would use. Start with quality dividend paying stocks. Learn how businesses behave. Learn what earnings, valuation, yield, and cash flow actually look like in the real world. Build pattern recognition. Build confidence. Build a little liquidity reserve alongside it. Then move into real estate in the smart way. If you want hands and exposure, consider house hacking. If you want equity growth with tax advantages, consider the live in improvement path. If you want real estate exposure without locking up your life, start with REITs. As your capital grows, you move toward the full 30-30-30-10 model, 30% in income, producing stocks, 30% in real estate or real estate equivalents, 30% in managed money or systems outside your own day-to-day decision making, 10% in cash or cash equivalents. So you always have dry powder and margin. That is how wealth gets built in a way that lasts. Not by chasing whatever looks hot this week, not by copying somebody else. Chapter 20 while you are still on Chapter 1, not by putting all your capital into one move. You do not fully understand. I have watched too many people blow themselves up that way. So if you are asking whether stocks or real estate build wealth faster, my answer is this. In the long run, both can be powerful. But for most people, stocks should come first because they teach you how money behaves without demanding the kind of capital complexity and risk tolerance that real estate demands on day one. Start where you can learn safely. Start where your mistakes are survivable. Start where your brain begins to care. Then, once you know what you are doing, bring real estate into the mix and let all three buckets work together. That is not the flashy answer. It is the answer that keeps you in the game long enough to actually get rich.